Let's ask the question again. What's the difference between a purchase option and a purchase lease option? It's the lease. And what does a lease mean? We rent something. We rent something out, okay? So this is where it's very similar to a rent to rent. So a purchase lease option is the other type, there are lots of types, but it's the main type of option. So it's very similar to a lease option, but we add this extra, to a purchase option, but we add this extra element called a lease. This is often called a PLO, a purchase lease option. It's sometimes called a lease option. They're all the same thing, just for terminology's sake. By the way, this is the terminology that we use, so we all have to understand what we're talking about. We would never use the terminology purchase lease option to a seller or even to an estate agent, because they will not have a clue what you are talking about, okay? We need to keep the language really simple. It's just the language that we use, okay? So, it's the same as a purchase option. We've got the right to buy this property at some time in the future. It might be slightly longer than a purchase option because we're going to lease it in the meantime. So we're going to pay a monthly option fee, a monthly lease fee to the owner of that property, okay? And you basically get to use the assets, the property. So let's say this could be a landlord. It could be a retiring landlord. Maybe they've got a property already set up as an HMO. It's fully compliant with all the things it needs to have, the fire escape, lighting, the interlinked smoke alarm, the fire, it's all set up, but because it's a tired landlord, maybe, you know, it's just not quite up to scratch. You know, we could take that property on, we could do a small cosmetic improvement, and then we could rent that property out, okay? So we get to use the asset, and what we pay the landlord is less than we charge the tenants, and so we make a profit, a margin. It's like rent to rent, but remember, because it's a purchase lease option, we've got the right to buy this property in the future as well. So this is perfect for HMOs. This is perfect for serviced accommodation. And you get cash flow, monthly profit on an asset that you don't actually own. Let me give you a very quick one. This is Josh. This is a large 13-bed HMO property in Oxford. Oxford is a very expensive. People say, oh, you can't do options in expensive areas. We've done options in London, in Oxford. It's all about finding the right circumstances, which I'll come to in a moment. So this is the property. And basically, Josh came and did our 3-day accelerator. We'll talk all about options. And one of the things we teach you to do, and James mentioned today, we tell you to tell everyone what you do. You never know people you meet who might be able to help you or you can help them. So he basically told this person he knew, he was actually working part-time in M&S in the food hall, and his job was to take people who are in wheelchairs around to help them with their shopping. There's one regular customer called Joe. He'd just done his training. He thought, I want to tell her what I've been doing. She said, what have you been up to? I said, I've just done some training and I'm learning how to help people who need to sell their houses quickly and investors get a great return. She said, oh really? You know, because she thought he just worked in M&S. And he said, oh, well, maybe you can help my landlord because my landlord's looking to sell. So she lived in this 13-bed HMO. This was the traditional landlord who did all the management himself. And he's getting old, he just wanted to retire. He quite liked the income coming from it. There was no mortgage on the property at all. Quite liked the income, but he just didn't want the hassle anymore. He was fed up of getting calls and was trying to go on holiday by tenants who had problems. So he was going to sell the property. It was worth at the time, full market value, about $840,000, worth a lot more now. And then Josh went, and by the way, he's quite young, so he did take his mum with him, which is quite cute, really. But he actually did most of the talking in the negotiation, right? He agreed a 5-year lease. And he said to this guy, basically, look, I'd love to, but I'm a bit young now. I literally can't get a mortgage. But I understand what you told me. You don't want the hassle. I can take the hassle. I've done some training. I know how to manage this. I can take on the hassle from you. You can go away, go on a holiday, spend more time with the family, and I'll still give you an income from it, but you've got none of the hassle, which resonated. And the landlord wanted to give Josh a bit of a help as well, because he was a young kind of guy as well. So he agreed an upfront option fee. It wasn't £1, it was £5,000. Understandably, this is a high cash generating property. and the owner wanted a bit of cash so he can go on a nice holiday, which he hadn't been on for years, by the way, because he had to manage the property himself, or was managing himself. And also he wanted some commitment, some skin in the game to Josh to make sure he was serious. He was only young, right? So he had to put down £5,000, which he borrowed from someone else. Paid the legals. That's a little bit on the light side. I think he got a bit of a mate's rate there. It'll probably be a bit more, I think, but he only paid $600 at the time. The owner did his own legals. And then his monthly cost, the owner said, well, I need at least £3,000 a month for this property. And Josh took a bit of a gulp, thought, okay, well, let me look at the numbers. Let's see if we can do that. And he ran the numbers and worked, I could pay the owner £3,000, which would, by the way, be not that much more than he'd be paying on a mortgage on the property anyway. So pay that, pay all the bills, and then this 13-bed property brings in $5,400 a month. That was in the current condition. There was occasionally an empty room or two, but that's because the guy wasn't really that bothered by it because he was making money on all of it. But Josh was focused. It's like if you rent to rent, you've got to be focused to make sure you maximize the rental income. So what this means is this property was bringing in £1,500 profit a month for Josh. So he got his $5,000, his cost, he got all his money back in the first 4 months, which is a pretty good return on investment, right? And then he's making money on that every single month. That's £18,000 a year profit. Now, the interesting thing about Josh was 17 at the time. If a 17-year-old kid can do this, I know anyone can do this once you've been trained properly, okay? So talk about building your belief. Now, that's just one property. What about if you work with a landlord who's got a whole load of properties and maybe take on a whole portfolio from someone and they just want to get rid of the hassle and retire? I want you to think about just how much this can make. It's quite incredible, okay? Now, you might think, why would a property owner agree to this, okay? And I think it's actually a page in your workbook to note that down. Why would they do that? Well, what you got to remember is you got to put yourself in the shoes, and this is one of the things that's going to stop you doing this if you don't get your head around this. So it's really important to listen carefully. Remember, we're looking for people who want to sell a property. They want to sell they don't want the property, no, they want to get rid of the hassle, the responsibility, the liability. They want to get rid of that, okay? So very important we understand that. They want to get rid of this property. They don't want it anymore. And what we're doing, we're coming on and we're taking away the hassle. We're taking away the responsibility. We're taking away the problem for them. That's what we're doing. That's what we need to think about, okay? Now, there's a lot to learn about this, but we can actually offer them more money from the sale than other people. Now, think about this. In the current market, we might be hello? Team, can we maybe go and sort that out? That'd be great, thank you very much. I think Andy's gone, yeah, okay. So I'm being heckled from the back of the stage, can you believe it? So anyway, what we need to understand is that in this market where the market's coming down, let me ask you a question. Most of us as investors, we might want to buy at a bit of a discount, mightn't we? Yeah, we don't want to pay full price typically. But if we go to someone and say, look, I can give you the full price that you want. I can give you the price you want if you give me the terms that I want. You might want to write that saying, I think it might be in the workbook for you. I can give you the full price you want if you give me the terms that I want. So I can give you that price if you can give me a bit of time to actually give you that money. And while the market's coming down, most people are trying to get a discount. If you're offering the full price, that might be good. Now you might say, well, hang on, Simon, the market's coming down. Why on earth would I want to give someone the full price? Well, look, if the price is generally coming down and you give someone the full price here, whereas most people might want to give them a price here, well, that market's going to come down and eventually go up again. And today's full price might well be a discounted price in relation to the future. Does that make sense? So if the period is long enough, now prices are going down, we don't know how long that's going to continue for, but at some point they'll come back up. If there's a long enough option period, today's full price let's say something's worth 200,000 now, and if someone's trying to sell it, they might only get 180, 190 if they're lucky. But we can give them 200 if they're prepared to wait. And then in the future, when we buy it, it might be worth 230, 250, but we get to buy it for 200. So we're getting a discount in the future, okay? So that's one of the important points. They can get more. Now, do you think most people selling a property want to get as much as they can from the property? Of course they do. So we can help someone do that. But, and this is a really important thing you need to understand with options, it only really works if the seller doesn't need the money now, okay? So what you need to understand is purchase options and purchase lease options, they do not work in all circumstances. And one of the biggest mistakes people make, they hear about this amazing tool, they try and use it on every single property deal, and they try and use it when it's not appropriate. Sellers say no, they think, oh, this doesn't work. Well, it does work when you use it in the right circumstance. So to help you explain, so I need to explain something about sellers. This is in your workbooks, I think. There are generally two groups of sellers. There's group A, which is the biggest group of sellers. The vast majority of people selling a property, they're selling that property because they need the money from the sale. Maybe they're going to pay off their own home mortgage, or maybe they want to invest in a business, or maybe they want to pay for their daughter's wedding, or whatever they want. They need the money. That's the reason they're selling the property. They don't want the property, but they need the money from the sale, okay? Is an option going to work for those people? Generally not, no, because they need the money now. We're suggesting they get it in the future, okay? Now, I think I told you, when I told you about auctions, I told you about Dave, one of my masterminders. He had someone who had that property, they had 30,000 equity, the property is worth 180, mortgage of 150, 30,000. He did give them all the money up front because that's what they wanted, the equity, and he was able to put a lot less in than if he was buying it. It's much better mortgage rate. So sometimes we can put money in, but we want to minimize the amount we put in ideally, right? What we're really looking for is group B. This smaller group of people, but people who are also trying to sell a property. They don't want the property, but they don't need the money now. So these could be people like retiring landlords, and they're just going to stick the money in the bank. There could be someone who's inheriting a property, for example. Or maybe there is no equity at all. Maybe the value of the property is the same as the debt, or even maybe the debt's even more, it's negative equity. They're not selling to get money because there is no money. They're selling because they want to get away from the liability of the property. So we're looking for group B, people who don't need the money from the sale now, and they might be interested in doing this, okay? So, and this is just for your workbooks, I've kind of pretty much said this. So group A, people who have got equity in their property, they're probably looking to sell it, they want to access, this is just for fill your blanks in your work, but they want to access that, they need the money for something else. They need the money for something else. And in that case, a purchase option is probably not going to work unless, like in the case of Dave, you're prepared to give them the equity they've got in the property, okay? Really looking for people B, group B, who want to sell that property, they want to get rid of it, and there might be equity, there might not be equity, but still if there is, they don't need the money. They're just going to stick it in the bank. But the point is they just don't want the property, don't want the liability, don't want the hassle, don't want the responsibility. They want to be able to get rid of the property. They don't need the money from the sale. And we can potentially give them more money if they're prepared to wait. So can you see, there are only certain circumstances when this works, but when it does work, it can be incredibly good. A perfect personal lease option could be an excellent solution. So we're looking for people in group B, just to be really clear, people who don't want or don't need the money from the sale right now. Hey, it's Simon here. I do hope you've just enjoyed that video on YouTube. I hope you took lots of notes, and more importantly, you're going to take action. And what I'd encourage you to do is click on the link in the description below the video. I've got some live online training that's very relevant to the video you've just watched. Come and register for that training, join me live online, and you can actually get your questions answered live as part of that training. So take the opportunity to come and join me live online, click on the link below and secure your spot before you miss the date. Take action right now. As ever, I encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill. Enjoy the next video.